From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me. Hello, everybody. Welcome back live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. Yes, tonight is actually a live show. Thank you all for hanging in there. Last week, my guest had a last-minute conflict, and that show couldn't happen, but I want to reschedule her for the summer. Quick things for those of you who will be in LA tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, February 7, 8, 9. We, myself, Steve Bassett, Danny Sheehan, Paul Hynek, a bunch of us will be at the Conscious Life Expo at the LAX Hilton, February 7, 8, 9. That's starting tomorrow. And a lot of really good UFO panels and seminars and lectures. 3 of the guys from Skinwalker Ranch, the TV show, are going to be there as well. And I'm on a panel with Thomas from that show on Sunday morning, the 9th. So I'm looking forward to meeting him. Also, tickets are on sale for Contact in the Desert 2025 this year, May 29 through June 2nd. I am the publicist for that show, and I will be all over that show as well. And the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, my organization, we have a booth there. So, and we have a booth at Conscious Life too. So come to Conscious Life this weekend and come to Contact in the Desert in late May. I'd love to meet you guys. Tonight, I'm honored to have true ufology royalty on my show tonight. Robert Salas served on active duty with the U.S. Air Force for 7 years, from 1964 to 1971. On the night of March 24th, 1967, Bob, a 26-year-old Air Force lieutenant, was cocooned 20 meters below Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, overseeing a cluster of 10 Minuteman I intercontinental ballistic missiles, which were buried beneath the base. Suddenly, a remarkable UFO event took place, which we will be discussing at length with Mr. Salas in a minute. After the UFO incident passed, Bob was instructed he could never speak of it again, as it was now classified. After leaving the Air Force in 71, Bob worked briefly as an engineer for Martin Marietta Aerospace and Rockwell International from 74 until he retired in 95. He worked for the FAA as an aircraft structural engineer. Bob testified at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure in Washington, D.C. in 2013. Discussing how UFOs have the ability to tamper with U.S. nuclear weapons. Nothing serious. He's the author of 3 books on the UFO phenomenon: Faded Giant, Unidentified, the UFO Phenomenon, and UAPs and the Nuclear Puzzle. And we will talk to Bob about his 3 books. Since 1996, Bob has been speaking around the world about his 1967 UFO missile shutdown experience. He sits on the board of directors of the group I created with Stephen Bassett called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And he and his lovely wife, Marilyn, live in Ventura, California. I've had the pleasure of meeting Bob and Marilyn several times in the last 2 years, and I consider them new friends. So, Race, let's welcome the one and only Mr. Robert Salas. There he is. How did I do?
Thank you, Dan. Well, there were a couple of minor errors in your intro, if you don't mind. But I was not 20 meters underground under Malmstrom Air Force Base. I was 20 meters underground, about 100 miles to the east, near Roy, Montana.
Oh, okay.
And that's where our capsule was. We call it a launch control facility, but it was a hardened site, 60 feet underground, 20 meters. The other thing is we don't live in Ventura. We live in Ojai.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought it was Ventura.
Okay.
I saw that somewhere.
We're about 12 miles to the, again, east of Ventura.
Okay, so next time I interview you, I'll make those corrections. All right, before we get into your incredible historic story, I always ask my guests, the first question is, where are you from originally? What did your parents do? And what were some of your interests, Bob, as a child?
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles, actually.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called the City of Commerce, where I grew up. Um, I was born in Chandler, Arizona, but we moved to LA when I was about a year old. My dad worked as a pharmacist. Uh, let's see, what was the other question?
Where are you from originally? What did your parents do? And what were your interests as a child?
Yeah. As a child, I was always interested in aircraft. I wanted to be in the Air Force. My two uncles, my favorite uncles, both fought in World War II. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. Join the military at some point and be in the Air Force.
So you had a passion for aircraft as a young kid, and two of your uncles were in the Air Force in World War II.
No, they were both Army. My one uncle served in Europe at the Battle of the Bulge, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
My other uncle served in the Pacific Theater. Not sure where he was. Well, I did have another uncle that did serve at Guadalcanal. He was a Marine at Guadalcanal, survived that. So yeah.
So when you were a child visiting with these relatives, you must have heard some remarkable stories, I would think.
Absolutely. Especially from the Marine at Guadalcanal. But unfortunately, he died young. When he got back, he went to work for the power company and had an accident. At any rate, they were all inspirations to me.
Okay. All right. So I think I know you joined the Air Force in 1964. I think you were 23 at that time. Is that correct?
I was 23. I turned 24. No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You got me mixed up a little bit. I joined the Air Force in 1960 when I was appointed to the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
I took my oath then and became active duty on graduation from the Air Force Academy in 1964.
Okay. So it was a 4-year school, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. And then you were with the Air Force for 7 years.
Active duty, yes.
Okay. So tell us the events leading up to your historic 1967 event. Tell us, how you came to be where you were that night and all the events that happened, because that's sort of your ufology's greatest hit story. You're a living legend with this story. So tell me as much as you want to tell me.
You bet. All right. So in 1965, the Air Force offered me an opportunity to get my master's degree in engineering by volunteering to be a missile launch officer, which I did. About a year of training, and then I landed at Malmstrom Air Force Base in August of 1966. Became a member of a two-man crew in late '66, and in 1967, in March 24th, I was on duty at a place called Oscar Flight, which is just a designator of one of the 15 flights we had. Each flight had control of 10 Minuteman I nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles. So our job, of course, was to monitor and launch those missiles given the order. Uh, Luckily, we never got that order.
Right.
Thank you.
Bob, is it like in the movies when two men have to turn the big red key, you know, 1, 2, 3, and you both turn the key? Is that real?
That's real. We did have keys. I don't know that they were red, but we did have keys.
I think in the movies, I think they're always red. Okay, go on.
Yeah. So on this particular evening, I was in command of the facility because my commander was taking a rest break. We had a little cot down there, and one of us had to be on alert, full alert at all times. I get a phone call from my topside guard. We had 6 guards upstairs, and we were locked in with a huge blast door. At any rate, he says there are strange lights flying above us. They're going very fast, stopping in midair, reversing course, making 90-degree turns. There's no engine noise. Sir, these are not airplanes. And I said, well, what do you mean they're not airplanes? They're not meteors. They're not stars. He said, sir, airplanes can't do what these lights are doing. So I said, you mean like UFOs?
And you were joking probably when you said that, right?
I was joking, but the reason I said that is because we had reports in the Great Falls Tribune, the Great Falls newspaper where I was living, about lights in the sky by farmers, and people on the street had been seeing these things for a couple of weeks prior. And I just laughed, and he laughed, and he said, no, these are not aircraft. I don't know what they are, sir. I said, well, I don't know what to do about it. Let me know when something more interesting happens. And I hung up the phone. So 5 minutes later, approximately, as I recall, was, about that time period, he calls back, and this time he's obviously frightened. He's shouting into the phone. He's babbling. I can't make any sense out of what he's saying until I calm him down a little bit. And he tells me he's got all the guards with their weapons pointed at a glowing red-orange object hovering just above the front gate. The gate was about 12 feet high. I tried to get some details about this object, but he said it was so bright he could barely see something solid inside the light, but he couldn't describe it any more than that. But he was very frightened.
Any idea how high up in the air it was?
He just said above the front gate. That's all. I asked him about how big it was. He said the object inside the light was about 40 to 50 feet long.
Wow. So it was huge. It was a huge orange-red thing.
It was a huge orange-red thing.
And they had their rifles, or
yes. That was their main job, of course, to secure the facility. That's what I told him. He said, "What do I do, sir?" And I, what am I going to say? I never run across anything like this.
Could you have left where you were physically? I know there was that blast door, but could you have gone up to see it?
No.
You were locked in.
Because at that point, I felt that we were under some sort of an attack upstairs.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. He was so frightened, and anyway, I told him, make sure nothing enters the enclosed fenced area, and do whatever it takes to maintain security upstairs. And then he hung up. He said one of the guards got injured. It turned out not to be as serious, except he did cut his hand and he had to be flown back to the base.
Did anyone fire their weapons at this craft?
You know, I never got an answer to that. I did ask them, but he was reluctant to talk to me later because they had been given orders not to discuss this any further with me or anyone else.
Okay, so you got 2 or 3 phone calls from this one guard up top.
I got 2 phone calls. I did have a third one, yes. So I hung up the phone. He hung up the phone, actually. And for some reason, again, I want to emphasize they had no ability to impact or affect our missiles at all upstairs. We had all the equipment, all the controls downstairs within the capsule. But for some reason, I looked over our status board, which showed the status of the missiles. The missiles were actually located about a mile or 2 away from the central location,
Okay.
the launch control center.
Okay.
I looked over at the board and they were all green, ready to launch.
Okay. And they normally would be green. They would normally always be green.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
So I went over to talk to my commander, wake him up, about to tell him about the phone calls, when all of a sudden we get a loud horn going off, and we both knew what that meant. It meant one of the missiles had gone down. So sure enough, we looked over at the board. One of the missiles had gone to a fault condition or a no-go condition, and we jumped up, and as we did, all 10 of them went down. All the rest of the missiles went down within seconds.
So all 10 green lights, did they change color, the green lights?
They all turned to red, yes.
Red. So they all, so you'd never seen one mishap, let alone 10 all at the same time.
No, I was there for 3 years. I think I had one missile go down from some problem, but never more than one.
So this was unprecedented, absolutely.
Unprecedented.
Okay.
So we went through our checklist. We did have a couple of other lights on that indicated possible intrusion in the launch facilities where the missiles were located.
Wow.
So I had to call upstairs. Of course, the first thing I asked is, what about this bright red object? And he said it just flew off just as I called. And everybody up there was okay, no problems. But I ordered guards to go out to these 2 facilities, these launch facilities. And again, they reported back seeing an object above each of those facilities. So let's see. So
you were with was it your commanding officer down in your space? The guy that was napping, was he?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yes, he was the commander of the facility. His name was Fred Mywald. He was also lieutenant, later became a colonel, and had an important job at SAC headquarters. But
okay, so when you woke him up, and there's a major UFO situation, did he look at you like, Bob, like, what world are you from? What drug are you taking? Like, how did he react when you woke him up?
Well, I woke him up to tell him about the phone calls.
The phone calls about the UFO above the gate.
Yes, but I never got that comment out about this object up there until, we started chatting, of course, while we were going through our checklist. But he was required to call back to command post at Malmstrom. We had a wing command post that we reported to. And when he got finished with that call, he turned to me and said, the same thing happened at another site. In other words, all 10 missiles went down during a UFO sighting. And I thought he meant that evening when he told me that. And that's the impression I had
Right.
for many years. So by that time, of course, he knew about the object above us.
Do you know the date and location of the other time that happened?
Oh yes, that was what I call the Echo Flight incident. Echo Flight was another center, launch control center, just like ours. 10 missiles.
Okay.
That witness was Lieutenant Walter Fiegel, who later also was promoted to colonel later in his career. He's still living, but he has refused to go public. However, I would certainly pass along his contact information to any person in Congress who's interested and can subpoena him.
So your event was 67. Was this other fellow's event before? It must have been before March 67. Is that right?
Yeah. No, it was before March 24th.
Oh.
It occurred March 16th.
Oh, so it was within the same month.
Yes, 8 days earlier.
Interesting. And what base and what city and state did that other one happen?
Well, he was part of our wing. Echo Flight was one of the flights that was under the control of Malmstrom Air Force Base.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah.
And there was a UFO event that on March, the earlier March date as well? There was a UFO event on the earlier date as well?
There were two UFO events in March of 67.
Okay.
Under Malmstrom Air Force Base control.
Okay. I didn't know about that first one.
The first one was Echo Flight, March 16th.
Okay.
And then my incident occurred March 24th. They were essentially the same, except in the case of Echo Flight, they had a overnight stay by maintenance people and security guards at two of the sites, launch facilities, when the missiles started going down. And again, he lost all 10. I've got Walt Fiegel on audio tape with his permission. And anybody who wants to hear his story can go to my website. It's called spiralgalaxy.org.
Okay.
And they can link to the Malmstrom incidents. And if you scroll down after you get to the my evidence page, you'll see the audio tape, and anyone can hear Walt Fiegel talk about the incident at Echo Flight.
All right, Bob. So all 10 missiles went to red, and you're going through your checklist. How long until they went green again? How long were they down for?
Well, they were still red when we were relieved by another crew the next morning. This happened. The incident occurred sometime in the evening. I can't give you a time, but it was dark outside. I know that. People have to understand there's no a reset switch or anything like that. These missiles.
So they were shut down for overnight, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. At least
many hours.
One night, maybe two. I really don't know, because we never got debriefed on what happened after that.
Wow. I just thought perhaps it was a half hour, an hour, 45 minutes.
No. These were out disabled for at least a day or two.
That's remarkable.
Because the indication we were getting by audio report, we had a way of querying the system on each missile. was guidance and control system failure. So whenever we had an inertial guidance system, inertial meaning we had gyroscopes. In the guidance package, we had gyroscopes, accelerometers, velocity meters, things like that. And they would produce data after launch, right? And that data would be sent to an onboard computer, if you will, which would calculate whether or not the missile was on target, on course, etc. We didn't have GPS then, right?
I got you. Okay. Bob, I hate to interrupt you. I think we have to take a little commercial break, pay some bills. Grace, let's put up some commercials, and we'll get back to Mr. Bob Salas in a minute. And we're back with the legendary Bob Salas. There he is. All right, Bob, my next question is, how certain are you that the craft that shut down your missiles was guided by non-human interference? In other words, was that an extraterrestrial craft, in your opinion?
Well, when we started getting documents from FOIA requests that we made in 1994, there was a Boeing team assigned. We found out there was a Boeing team assigned to investigate. Boeing had the primary contract on the Minuteman I.
Okay.
And during their investigation, they did a bench test on one of the pieces of hardware integral to the guidance system. It was called the logic coupler. So think of the logic coupler as a device that crunches data in the missile guidance portion. And so when they did a bench test on this at a particular frequency and voltage and duration of a signal, they were able to cycle it off. In other words, they hit it with a particular signal that was able to cycle it. And they mentioned this in this report. And later we were able to contact them, the people that had actually done this test, and get specifics about this signal.
Okay.
But in the report and in our comments with them, they said this had to be an external signal. There's nothing within the missile equipment or electronics itself that could have generated such a signal. So if you extrapolate that information, this object hovering above us would have had to send such a signal to each missile separately and penetrate 60 feet of earth and concrete and steel, and penetrate the cable system that went to each missile, which was triply shielded. Now, these cables are about 8 to 9 inches in diameter.
Wow.
They're big cables. They're triply shielded against EMI, electromagnetic interference. So I don't know that of anything that could have done that we.
I mean, Russia in 1967 probably couldn't do that, right?
No,
Russia.
no.
Or China.
Plus, they would have had to fly this thing over from Russia, and but if they could have done it, well, I hesitate to say what would have happened. But
Bob, before that night, which really changed the course of your life, had you given much thought to the idea of extraterrestrial life or UFOs at all?
Not really. Not really. Of course, I had seen Star Wars, not Star Wars, but there was
Day the Earth Stood Still, I guess. Star Trek, maybe Star Trek was out then.
Star Trek. I never gave it any thought, really. Now, it was kind of interesting that we were seeing people in Great Falls, Montana, were seeing strange lights in the sky, but I hadn't dwelled on it. I certainly wasn't focused on UFOs at all.
And when you went home that next morning, when you went to bed, did you think, okay, I just had an extraterrestrial experience?
Well, it was even before that. I came to the conclusion that these were not aircraft that we had in our inventory or even dreamed of having. But of course, I had to hold open the possibility that this was some kind of special device, maybe even that the Air Force had developed in secret. In fact, it was the first thing I asked my squadron commander when we were ordered back to the base to report to his office. There was another man there from AFOSI, Office of Special Investigation. And the first thing I said to both of them was this some kind of a Air Force exercise to try and, check our readiness or something?
Right.
And he said, absolutely not. They confirmed it was not an Air Force, experimental exercise of any kind.
Were you, so that day, or I guess it's the day after, Bob, where you were told this is a classified event, don't discuss it, don't talk about it, you are not to discuss this with anyone. Did that happen right away?
Right away, as soon as we walked in, he said that, and then he shoved NDA, non-disclosure agreement, into our faces and said, sign here. Sign what? And then he said, this is classified, highly classified. You're never to talk to anyone about it. No one in the Air Force, no relative, not your wife, nobody.
Wow.
And sign here. And in the statement, I read through it quickly. I asked for a copy. He said he can't give me a copy.
So you had no choice. You had to sign it. You had no choice.
I had no choice, really. I was ordered to by a squadron commander and this guy. But in there, it did say I would spend many years in Leavenworth prison.
So that's a good incentive to sign. I probably would have. I think I would have signed that one as well.
If I ever disclosed any of this to anyone.
All right. So, Bob, that leads to my next question. So, from 67 to 94, it's 27 years. You kept this quiet, this event.
That's correct. That's correct.
What gave you there's a Yiddish word, chutzpah. What gave you the chutzpah, the courage to come forward in 94 and start telling the world about this remarkable event?
So in 94, I was out of the Air Force. I was working for FAA and decided to retire from FAA and become a school teacher. Why not? So I was at the University of Washington bookstore, walking through the bookstore. Title caught my eye. It said Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. I picked the book up, happened to turn to page 301 of the book. It was about a 500-page book. And that was the only page in the entire book that talked about UFOs shutting down missiles in Montana near Great Falls in 1966 and 67. I don't know about the 66 one, but the 67, of course, I was there, and I remember that year that my incident occurred.
Wait, Bob, hold on. Bob. You picked up the book, turned to that page, and that was the exact page about you?
It's the only page discussing
in the whole book, and you just happened to turn to that. So there's another Yiddish word called beshert. Beshert means something that was meant to happen.
Okay,
that event in your life was beschert. Okay, go ahead.
That's a true story. I mean, I'm not making that up.
I believe you. It's a remarkable story. I love it.
So, God, I got excited. Hey, maybe the Air Force declassified this and I can start talking about it. So I kind of overreacted, I guess. I was so excited because it was almost like a relief. Over the last 27 years, I was.
That's a hell of a secret to keep there, Bob. I mean, that's a remarkable.
It's a hard secret to keep, yeah. So anyway, I went home and spilled the beans to my wife.
That must have been a relief.
Yeah.
Did she look at you like, Bob, have you been smoking crack? What did Marilyn say?
Actually, she's been great. She's always supported me from day one. But I was taking a hell of a risk just telling my wife about it. And then she happened to tell a friend, and the friend suggested I contact MUFON, which I did to submit a FOIA request.
Okay.
And we did.
94.
That was 94. I was about June of 94.
Were you a member of MUFON? Were you aware of MUFON all this time?
I'd never heard of MUFON.
Okay, until they helped you do the FOIA request.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
James
Go ahead.
Klotz. James Klotz, a great investigator for MUFON. I told him, I said, let's write to the Air Force, but say nothing about UFOs. Okay. I just want to see why this report was in this book and ask for any documents they could send us about this incident. This happened to be the Echo flight incident.
Okay.
They wrote back and said, this is classified. However, since so much time has passed since the incident, we're going to declassify it and send you documents. Hooray.
So you made that happen. So when Timothy Good wrote that in his book, he was taking a chance, wasn't he?
No, well, Timothy Good got that information from Raymond Fowler.
Okay.
That he put in the book. Raymond Fowler was a manager of a group working on electrical systems under Sylvania contract with the Air Force. And he had a few people working for him at Malmstrom when this incident occurred. And they called him, reported that these two incidents, Echo and Oscar, were UFO incidents, and that the missiles went down during these UFO sightings. So Ray Fowler, who was interested in UFOs at the time, contacted the Condon investigators. Edward Condon was contracted by the Air Force in 66 to do a study of UFO sightings over Air Force bases. But the true objective of that was not to do a scientific study.
Right.
It was to whitewash these things again, these incidents, and allow the Air Force to declare this was a waste of their time and we're no longer going to be reporting to the public on UFOs.
Right.
And that was the real purpose.
Condon wrote the conclusion before the study even happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that. I want to talk to you about your books. Can we talk about your books?
Let me finish.
Okay, sure. You finish first. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because we have to complete the circle here.
Okay.
So the Condon investigator went to speak with Ray Fowler and get this information.
Okay.
And then he promised to go to Malmstrom speak to them about these incidents, and he did. Excuse me. He spoke with a man called Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Chase, who was a base ops officer, operations, and the base UFO officer who happened to be working with Condon on UFO sightings. At any rate, Chase lied to him about the Echo and Oscar shutdowns, but he did point him to a guy that an officer who was working the investigation, and that man told Craig. Roy Craig was the investigator of Condon. That when they were finished with their report, which was classified, they could go back and request to see that report, but they'd have to go to headquarters Air Force to get permission to see it. Condon went back. I'm sorry, Craig went back and talked to Robert Lowe about this. Robert Lowe, of course, was the man who had written a letter spoofing the entire UFO question, and he came up with the conclusion for the investigation even before they had done any work at all on it, which was to whitewash it. But at any rate, he told Craig, no, we're not going to request this report the Air Force was doing on Echo Oscar, and because it would be too highly classified, he was told by higher ups in the Air Force. Even though when they got the contract, they were promised everything the Air Force had, including classified reports, which they did not ask for. So when the Condon report came out, it said nothing about Echo or Oscar shutdowns at Malmstrom in '67.
Okay.
That annoyed Fowler to the point where Fowler got angry and gave an interview to the Christian Science Monitor. I think that was in 1973. And that was published. And that is where Timothy Good got the information that he put in his book.
Gotcha.
I just wanted everybody to understand how
you did it. No, you did it. You certainly fulfilled that circle. Thank you very much. I actually followed you there. I want to talk a little bit about your books. Race, can we see slide number 1, please? This is your first book from 2005, Faded Giant. I've not read it, I'm sorry to say, but is this this is the event that changed your life? Is that pretty much the premise of this book?
This describes the two events, the Echo and Oscar.
Both events. Okay.
It also has in the appendix many of the FOIA documents we received from the Air Force, declassified from secret to unclassified. But people can see quite a bit of information. There are a couple of errors in there. One error was my mistaken understanding at the time when I wrote the book that Echo and Oscar had gone down on the same day, because that's the impression I got from my commander.
Right.
But so that is an error in the book of somebody.
You found out later it was 8 days apart, like you said earlier.
Exactly. I found out the exact dates. Yeah.
Were you ever able, and maybe it's in this book, were you able to talk to the guards that were calling you on the phone that night and freaking out? Were you able to talk to them even informally, like, hey, that was a hell of a night, wasn't it? Or you were never allowed to talk to them?
No, the NDA was specific. I was not to talk to anybody in the Air Force or out about this incident. They actually called me at home the next day. They got me out of bed. After my Usually I sleep late after I've had one of these tours of duty. My wife woke me up, said there's a call for you. So it was the guards from the previous night,
Okay.
and they wanted me to come out. They would meet me anywhere, on base or off base, and they just wanted to talk about this and talk to me about it because, of course, I was the one they had talked to. So, and I had to turn them down. It just killed me that I had to say no, but I couldn't.
Did they have to sign the same NDA that you did, the guards?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I know for a fact that when I went back upstairs after we were relieved by another crew, the first thing I did is I talked to that man I had spoken to on the phone, the main guard, and he wouldn't talk to me. He was very, he wouldn't answer my questions. And I was getting upset because, hell, I was a lieutenant. He was just an airman in rank. So I finally put him to attention and said, damn it, answer my questions. Not realizing that he had already been contacted by his supervisors.
Okay, so he couldn't.
Not to speak. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Your next book, race number 2, please, my friend. Okay. So this unidentified, the UFO phenomenon. Tell us a little bit about this one, please.
Yes. After I started getting into researching my own incident, I started getting phone calls and messages from people all around the world. And of course, I spoke in many countries, 17 to date.
Wow.
And some of these stories started filtering back to me about other similar incidents. And so this book goes into a lot of those incidents. Too many to go into here. I think there were about 13 I identified in this book, but it goes into a discussion of that.
So other missile shutdowns in other countries. Is that right?
Well, not necessarily missile shutdowns, although there were incidents where UFOs came over nuclear weapons bases and shined a light on nuclear weapons storage areas. Some of the NATO countries, like Italy, the Netherlands, which had and still have nuclear storage facilities in Europe that NATO forces can access if need be.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. What was Stanton Friedman like? I never got a chance to meet him. Were you close to him?
He was terrific. Yeah, I knew Stanton well. He was one of the first investigators to contact me after he found out about my incident, and we stayed in touch until his death. But no, he was terrific. He's really the one that, well, as you know, he interviewed Jesse Marcel, Major Marcel.
Sure. He re-upped the whole interest in Roswell in the 70s.
Absolutely. And
yeah. I interviewed Jesse Marcel III the other day on my show. Major Marcel's grandson. Have you ever met him, Jesse III? He's a nice guy.
Not the third. I met his son. I met Jesse Marcel himself, who actually gave me his sketches of what the symbols were on this piece of hardware he looked at when he was, 12 years?
That's very cool. Did you ever meet Kenneth Arnold by any chance?
I never met Kenneth Arnold, no.
Okay. I interviewed his granddaughter, Chanel Shans, recently. I'm getting all the relatives of all the ufology icons. Race number 3, please. Our friend Steve Bassett said this book of yours is the most important book ever published about UAPs. Tell us about this one, please.
Okay, well, as a result of my research and my own incident and the Echo incident, and I came to the conclusion that these incidents occurred because, and again, I came to the same conclusion everyone else has, that these are non-human intelligence operators of these craft, and they want to send us a message about the stupidity, the utter stupidity of having nuclear weapons. And that's why I decided to write a book specifically on that issue. It goes over some of the previous incidents I had in the previous book in more detail that I found out later, and basically pushing the idea of let's try to get rid of our nukes.
Wouldn't that be nice? I wrote a book, Bob. I wrote a book called "After They Came." It's sci-fi. Two benevolent aliens come to Earth near future to save mankind. The first thing they do is eliminate every nuclear weapon on the planet.
Okay.
And when I was promoting it, people said, "Oh, benevolent aliens, the aliens that aren't here to kill us or eat us. They're benevolent." So that's why my book has been very popular, because they're not about aliens that kill people and eat people.
Great.
I know you met with Nancy Mace in November. Are you hoping to? We're all hoping, but are you think that you'll be testifying before Congress anytime soon?
Well, I'm hopeful. Steve Bassett, of course, is working like hell to get that done.
Right.
Not only for me to be a witness, but David Shindeli is another one who had an incident at Minot Air Force Base in 1966. Again, all 10 nuclear missiles were shut down. And there have been many others, too many to go over, but it deserves a hearing all by itself. That this topic of UFOs involving nuclear weapons bases and facilities, and a clear message, really. The problem is right now, the basis, as stated in writing by a report put out by the Department of Defense of the United States every couple of years, and the statement is that nuclear deterrence is the hardcore basis of our national security. In other words, the MAD doctrine, right? Mutually assured destruction.
Right.
And that is idiotic. Now, it's true we haven't had a nuclear war since the end of World War II. We hadn't used nukes. However, the number of nuclear nations has increased to 9. And more countries like Iran and even Saudi Arabia. You know, we have a recent agreement where Saudi Arabia will now start getting technology and information about nuclear power, building nuclear power plants. And that was from the previous administration. I think they solidified this agreement with Saudi Arabia. But we have 2 nuclear nations that are at war with each other right now, and that's India and Pakistan.
Right. Well, let's hope my benevolent aliens come and just wipe them all out. Because if they're all gone, then we're all back to before the Manhattan Project. That's what has to happen. They all have to be gone, because if any one country has them over anyone else,
that's right.
It's just the worst thing. One of the worst things that ever happened, really, to mankind.
And to quote Oppenheimer, we humans cannot believe that we can't dismantle all of our nuclear weapons and keep them out of the hands of anyone.
Yeah, he gave birth to the most dangerous item in human history. Did I see that you're going to be speaking at Contact in the Desert this year?
Yes, absolutely. I'll be there.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll see you. We have to wrap up. We have about a minute. I'll see you there. Contactinthedesert.com. Tickets on sale. I'm the publicist for Contact Bob, just so you know. So I always promote it, but it'll be great to see you there. And you're on the board of my group with Stephen Bassett, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Thank you. You've been a great member. You come to many of our events and the holiday party. That was fun. I'm sorry I didn't have more time to speak to you in Maryland at the Hollywood holiday party.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see everyone. And I'll be at the next get together we have with Steve Bassett.
Right, February 16th. It's a day with Stephen Bassett, and that'll be fun. Bob, how can people reach you if they'd like to email you or contact you? What's the best way?
Well, they can send me messages through either Facebook. I'm still on X, which I hope won't last much longer. I'm on Blue. What's that other website? Forgot.
Instagram, LinkedIn.
Well, no, LinkedIn. The Blue Sky, is it called? Or
I don't know that one. All right, so Facebook and X, people can get you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, great. Okay.
And I've got a YouTube channel. They can go there and see videos that I made about the Malmstrom incidents. That's Bob Salas at Giant Head 3. That's my YouTube channel.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing my dopey show. I really appreciate it. And there's a lot of comments people have from around the world that are enjoying this interview, Bob. Thank you for doing this for me. I will see you Feb 16th at A Day with Steve Bassett. And, and is Marilyn's coming too as well? Yes?
Marilyn will be there, yes.
Great. Okay. Good luck. Good health to you and Marilyn. I'll see you in a few weeks. And everybody else, thanks for watching my show. I'll see you next week live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.